Hi friends, this is Yoga Light, and today we continue to look at physical practices in yoga and the subtle anatomy of the energy pathways. There are three main nadis, energy pathways in the body: a central channel, the Sushumna, running up the spine, the Ida on the left, and the Pingala on the right, running alongside or in a spiral around the central channel. These are often presented as the caduceus, a staff with wings, and intertwined snakes from the symbol of medicine. For the moment, we will set aside the tantric symbols and associations with qualities like warm and cool and look at the practice of alternate nostril breathing. This is the most common breathing practice beyond just taking a deep breath. It starts with slowing the breath down, bringing calmness. In systematic breathing, there is usually a sequence of exercises that stimulate different energies and helps to build the breath retention and other goals. Using systematic breathing practices are a support for meditation, meaning that by doing the practices you will go deeper in meditation, often much more quickly, and as we shall see later on, this also translates into being able to return to deep states more quickly. We will look at this more closely when we get to the inner being. It warms us up and prepares us for the alternating breath. Alternating breath is normally practiced for at least 10 minutes, multiple times daily. The practice can also go on for many hours a day. Advanced versions use breath retention and locks, which we will examine later. It is also sometimes used as a symbolic action in rituals. Through practice, we balance the nadis on either side of the spine. When the flow is even, it increases the flow that runs through the central spine so that the consciousness expands. This expansion involves increased capacity to handle energy and an increase in prana. We awaken dormant pathways and make new connections. This releases blockages and makes room for emergent qualities. It also connects to the higher or deeper consciousness, allowing for more divine influence and changing the subtlety of awareness. It opens the way for the causal energies to take up the work of transformation. In most systems, it is a preparation for awakening the Kundalini. In practice, the duration of the breath and the ratio of inhale to exhale and retentions are the focus of the pattern. The aim is to make the breath duration equal on both sides, balancing the energy flow on both sides, which increases the flow of energy through the central spine where the chakras reside. This increased energy flow opens the chakras, increases their expression, and allows the third eye to distribute the subtle energy in the system where needed. The system will open and expand through the subtle body, affecting the different layers of consciousness, and increase the action in the subtle world. Imbalances and blockages occur on the energy level, but also physically, emotionally, and mentally. Our ability to be true to ourselves or have insight is impeded. As we establish a good flow of energy, blockages and obstacles are removed, qualities begin to emerge, and then transformational experiences take us deeper into subtlety. This also means changing conditions around us. Balancing the energy flow with alternate nostril breathing in the spine is also aided by asanas, their sequences, and meditation. This process of increasing and developing the flow of prana and the results can be described in two different ways. It comes down to how one makes progress and how one evolves. One way is to describe it as a flow of prana, of energy, and relate it to changes in our way of being. A second way is describing the flow of a specific energy, the Kundalini, which will flow through the most subtle nadi, the Brahma nadi. This is the pathway where the chakras reside. The central spine, Sushumna, has sublayers, the Vajra, and within it the Chitra nadi, the innermost being the Brahma nadi. We will go into this when we get to Kundalini, but for now some would assign any transformational change to the action of the Kundalini as a causal energy. Others are really focused on Kundalini being a particular kind of spiritual experience. For our purpose, we will describe the slow growth of becoming as it is related to the flow of prana. As the energy system changes, we experience the world differently and qualities arise. The flow of energy and our capacity is initially limited. The scope of this change is limited and needs to be transcended by a causal force, the Kundalini, Adi Shakti, or the soul. Practice itself can only take you so far without the causal influence. Though many are practicing with the idea of awakening the Kundalini, we are now looking at what happens before that. If you do alternate nostril breathing, how does your life change? When we change the energy flow, this changes our consciousness and what we experience. The main ideas: balancing, purification, perfection, and subtlety. The first idea is balancing the Ida and Pingala. The first way of describing it points to brain studies, which show that the left and right sides of the brain control different functions of the mind and opposite sides of the body. Individuals vary in their development, but the two functions work together, and some brain areas are more developed. Many different things, especially working towards a skill, can change the development and the connections for that part of the brain. This can be influenced by alternate nostril breathing. Essentially, the right side is more visual, seeing patterns and images and controlling the left side of the body, and the left is more concerned with logic, analysis, and concepts. One part does the math, while the other part does estimations and compares results. This is not as clear-cut as it is often presented because tasks often need both sides. For instance, in speech, your ears hear sounds differently, with the right ear hearing faster than the left, yet the sounds appear synchronized. The right side processes the rhythm and prosody. The left side works on the distinctive sounds and syllables. So if I ask you to visualize your dream house and then ask you how you're going to pay for it, these are two different streams of thought. Though the first question may have an underlying dialogue with the second shaping the vision, it can be like watching a movie with the director's commentary. You conjure a dream house, and many different angles can contribute. What you expect to be doing, family considerations, where you picture the house, if the car parked out in front is important, along the ocean, a guest house for your aging parents, or a forested mountain view. There's also a weight and expectation. This is often done in an instant, but there are dialogues in the mind that arise. You are influenced by conditioning, expectations, prior thoughts about your dream house, something you saw in a movie recently, etc. Maybe your dream house isn't important to you at all, or you don't expect to be in a situation to create it, or you are afraid of losing your current house. Maybe you have trauma, such as you've owned a house that's been destroyed by a disaster, or you don't think you will ever be able to afford one. Maybe you are excited and inspired. So images and symbols are meeting places of many ideas and emotions. Much of the initial vision may come from the subconscious. It could arise from the subliminal consciousness, such as the intuitive vision or a formation for manifestation. If you thought about it, you might understand why it was pictured in a particular way. Alternate nostril breathing stimulates the two sides and promotes hemisphere synchronization, where the two sides communicate more effectively. The alternating breath helps us to balance the nadis, which is related to the left and right brain. You can find that there are associations such as heating and cooling, masculine and feminine associated with them. However, rather than working to diagnose an imbalance, you are actually working to open up the system. Balancing the flow brings about better flow in the central spine, more life energy, and greater awareness. As the energy flow is balanced, it allows more to flow in the central channel, and more energy is drawn to the central spine during breath retention. There are signs that point to the effects of the breathing practice. One of these is clarity. Another is flexibility of the mind to handle different perspectives and knowledge. We gain a greater capacity for seeing the richness of experience. As the flow is balanced, more energy can move through the spine and be distributed. It will also expand the flow to the nadis, activating and expanding the consciousness. Consciousness here means that we have knowledge, awareness, and action. A second modern perspective is that we are changing the frequency of our brain waves. This is often applied to meditation. We move from active beta waves, which is normal thinking and focus, to alpha waves, which is our relaxed state. Theta is dreaming, and delta is in deep sleep. Gamma is involved in integrations, such as hearing words with the ears. The key idea here is that there are different states that we become familiar with, our mental focus or our more relaxed daydreaming state. We can also add in the fight or flight or relax and digest, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. We need the self-observation to notice and appreciate the differences. The breath is one of the quicker ways of shifting our state of consciousness. Alternate nostril breathing over time will give us a better ability to direct our mind and move between states with intention and awareness. Over the years, I have had people new to systematic breathing practices who get confused at the initial instruction or need to hear it often. This is not due to the instruction, it is very clear, but due to the practice, as initially they enter into a very relaxed and dreamlike state and are not used to it. They cannot keep a focus and be in a dreamlike state simultaneously. As they become familiar with it, they can begin to both be able to follow instructions and stay in a relaxed meditative state. You learn to keep focus and experience clarity in the deep states of relaxation. This is often the case in many forms of meditation where the person returns and knows that they weren't asleep, but has no memory of what happened. This is a type of dullness that one must pass through. Over time, the mind will be able to stay very aware and even able to direct the awareness or be conscious of very subtle experiences. Balancing the two nadis allows for this focus awareness while being very relaxed. People can have a nasal deviated septum, affecting the airflow through the nostrils. Most people have some level of unevenness, but in some cases it causes problems. Alternate nostril breathing allows you to balance the duration of the flow of the breath through each side, allowing the two nadis to flow more evenly. You can use the hand to close the more open side. If you didn't know you were predominantly developed on one side, this can cause more rapid changes. Over time, the effects become more subtle. There are many factors at play. Just because you primarily breathe through one side of the nose doesn't mean your conditioning hasn't led you to compensate or build up communication between the two sides. You may be stronger in the image and pattern side of the brain by the breath development, but you were born into a family concrete business that works doing heavy labor and precise measurements. This does have a consequence for practice, as some systems of yoga are very strict about how the hand is held in which hand. This has little effect. You can find different traditions using different hand placements. One idea is that you're trying to replicate what someone else successfully did. You may also be seeking to keep someone with a focused discipline. You want the hand to be in a conscious position. Mudra and the flow of energy as directed by the hands are important, but changing the hand placement to partially close the more open nostril to even the duration of the flow of air is valuable. Not everyone has the same balance of arm length, and the wrist placement is not always optimal for some gestures. Fortunately, in the iconography of Shiva, he is often seen with a Y-shaped branch that looks like a slingshot. This is used to place the elbow in for long practice sessions, so some use of props such as a bolster to support the arm is okay. A common experience in yoga is for there to be a release of emotions. They can appear without a trigger or memory. The emotions emerge, and there can be a disconnect as we don't know why we feel that way, or they occur with a rush of old memories. Sometimes these memories appear to the mind as if speeded up, or are a bundle of memories together in a flash. This is often while doing deep relaxation after a physical practice, but it can happen in postures, movements, breathing, meditation, or daily life. Contents arise in the mind of old traumas, memories, and emotions, and even the former sense of self that goes with them. They can briefly dominate the mind and often seem inexplicable, with nothing obvious causing this sudden intrusion of subconscious material. The experience is different from the usual wandering mind of association and memories. Sudden rushes of anger or sadness, giggling, vivid memories of a certain situation, and a sense of ourselves as we were in the past. A bit of our life scrolls before our eyes in review. It is in some way an inappropriate emotion or is more powerful than a simple memory experience or an emotional reaction. For instance, you are doing a headstand and have an intense rush of frustration. The key idea here is that the frustration is being released energetically, allowing other awareness and feelings to emerge. With the frustration cleared, the pent-up emotion, then there is little need for psychological work. Doing yoga should bring you more happiness and open one to feelings of peacefulness. The flows will remove blocks, but it is to allow new energies and consciousness to emerge. This is not healing ills, but rather the development of potential. Sometimes the experience includes the insight that is a purification, a release, or an intuition revealing knowledge of the self with far-reaching consequences. If one has energy awareness, this can include an experience of energy moving in the body. We can be aware of our energy state and sense that the energy is changing, feeling it in action, pushing through a block, something leaving the body, or that the circulation is different. Physical sensations can also occur with the energy, sensations such as cold or heat, vibration, pressure, a shooting electrical sensation, or even a shock. Not everyone is energy sensitive. People's needs are different, and there are many variations. Different practices of asana and pranayama can cause these types of releases as our energy begins to flow in new ways. For most, this type of experience happens once or twice. Purification occurs when something that isn't in harmony shifts towards the true movement. Energy blocks manifest as a misrecognition or lack of awareness and a resulting inner response, such as anger, outward action, or inaction. You can have experiences, for instance, that where you are naturally good at something that is beneficial to you, but you have some interaction that pollutes the emotional relationship with it. For instance, you are good at creative writing and expressing yourself, but your parents thought it was a waste of time and pressured you to study medicine. They ridiculed your writing. Later in life, as you do alternate nostril breathing, the nadis begin to flow, and the block rises to the surface as an experience, such as a memory rush, an electric shock, or even an outward flow of events. Then your circumstances allow you an opportunity to explore recapturing the joy of writing. The release, the outward opportunity, your personal energy, and the drive that arises in you to create are related. You move from a misrecognition to a fuller expression of who you are. There can be karmic and soul purpose implications with this. We could be said to be burning karma. Old attachments and identities are released, and with them the generative power to create situations for their expression. The momentum and consequences fade. Over time, we can see places where we are not being true to ourselves or where we are not relating to the world authentically. These can be thought of as relationships. We might not feel good about money, work, people, activities. We want to avoid being caught up in the story of the world and our ego, but instead look at the flow of energy through the mind-body system, letting the higher and deeper consciousness shape it. The emotional release, or the world of the mind, an old sense of self falling away, is a purification. There are different explanations of what is going on. It is overdetermined, meaning that there can be many explanations that are all useful and sufficient in themselves. For instance, we are aligning our true purpose with our sense of self, and we need to accept the former ways that we have lived and be open to new ways of being in the world. But we can also say that we unblocked stuck energy, cleared a pathway, or awakened something that is pushing out the old material. You could even say that it results from relaxing some deep-seated tension in the body. Sounds good. Why not? However, it is more than just different perspectives. The problem is that our mental ideas also affect our experience and development. Old mental ideas can be part of the purification. So we are looking at the breathing practice, the energy, the mind, and most importantly, aspiration. What are we trying to achieve? What is the alignment with our true self calling us to be? Essentially, the practice is breath, energy, and aspiration. Our perspective or mental ideas affect our energy and what is happening. The most fundamental idea in all this is what we consider ourselves to be and our sense of what is real. If we treat the memories as if they are real, like recordings, we will have a different value placed on them than if we think of them as a creation of the mind. It is also not just a matter of thoughts, but there is a deeper seat to the idea. It becomes a question of the level of our development. Blocked energy will limit our development and not allow us to utilize deep-seated ideas. We can understand something with mental compassion, but not really experience the power of heartfelt compassion. You can mentally understand memories are not a recording, that old remembered suffering is not real, that reoccurring traumatic memories are not happening now, but the ability to reject something based on that idea, to have the actual power to change the consciousness, comes from developing the energy system. One of the essential changes from practice is we are able to create a distance between our sense of self and the mind. This is the benefit of pranayama in that we become more aware of subtlety. When contents arise as part of a purification, the story that those contents tell is less important. The memories are fundamentally unreal as the events they depict are not happening, nor did they happen in the way in which they are presented via memory. Our identity shifts more to the silent witness. We can look at it as a flow of energy. Instead of looking within the story, we can look for a better flow of energy. Our mind-body system can flow more effectively. We become less attached. For instance, let's say someone swerves in front of us, forcing us into the oncoming lane. We may react with anger, fear, or even both over time. This trauma can stay with us as we associate the location and the feelings, and the memory comes up. We may have all sorts of dramatic imaginations. We may become hyper-alert and project emotions on all sorts of cars and traffic, not trusting other drivers. This is really not about the story of what happened to us. We are neither the fear nor the anger. It is that we experience those movements of the mind and need to move in a different way. We may recognize it mentally but not be able to change it. As a result of the practice, it becomes easier to redirect the mind and the state of consciousness, to not react to superficial events and traumas, and even to have insight into why they occur. We can also start to be aware of and value this happening and improve our ability to do it. One of the main benefits of balancing and purification is that we attain more equanimity and more equality. We react less superficially to things. We are more detached and more insightful. We want to avoid the trap of being locked into the idea of yoga as therapy and that our problems exist because of our past conditioning and that we need to fix things. This view looks to our past and present conditions, like our jobs and relationships, and seeks to make yoga a tool for managing stress, either past or present. It loses sight of our becoming. Yoga becomes limited by being seen as a way of bringing content to the surface. You can search for tension in the body and then associate it with a traumatic cause, which we will then need to deal with psychologically. Not all tension is caused by trauma. Not all trauma is related to tension in the body, and one needs intuition and discrimination to see the difference in the sense of what traumas and tension block us from becoming. Intuition and a true sense of becoming can be developed by aiming to perfect it, the aspiration to be. Even when we know this, we often don't have a space created for never experienced or unlived potential. Alternate nostril breathing helps us step back, focus, and aspire. We can, for the sake of simplicity, say that there are 3 goals in yoga. There are gradations and variations. One is conceived as realizing a transcendent absolute of perfect peace and immobility beyond time and space. One can experience this and find that the world or reality appears to be a mere shadow projected on the vast infinities of this transcendent. The second is that we aim to realize a relationship with the divine. As we see, the all is created by a supreme oneness that is all things and projects a limited aspect of itself in complete freedom, as it is neither diminished by this nor in any way compelled. The world is an enjoyment of itself in a play of light and love, with perfect knowledge and power. Yoga seeks to dwell in the light of this supreme, in the backdrop of the passive, eternal transcendent. The third is where one is an instrument, identifies with that supreme, and expresses that like a ray of the sun. One can say there are 4 fates to the soul: reincarnation, a transcendent without divine relation, heaven with divine relation, and realization of the oneness with the supreme action. Which one you seek may not have to do with the ultimate fate, but be a product of your development and the needs of the soul in this lifetime as an individual, universal, and transcendent being. Any given incarnation is a combination of your karma, the soul's mission of self-evolution, and the world conditions. You, as a spark of the divine, enter into manifestation and progressively climb a ladder of evolution through lifetimes. In those lifetimes, your deep spiritual aspiration will relate to the world and take many forms of attitudes, ideas, and beliefs based on your needs, your development, and the world's conditions. The third idea is perfection. Over time, with a balanced practice, the alternate nostril breathing will give you more prana, energy, and develop our subtle body. This will lead to changes across the koshas. These changes are related and interactive. Qualities will arise. In a general sense, we increase our capacity, flexibility, and openness. These qualities produce more equality. We will become more observant, engaged, and accepting as the basis for our actions. Equality allows us to observe without reacting. Our silent witness is strengthened. It is freedom. And we will be able to act within this freedom based on the knowledge. This has a profound implication if we approach creation as a oneness. Then all beings, events, things, and ideas are part of the unity that is equally supported by the divine. The qualities can be broadly grouped into 4 levels. The physical body will generally become healthier and more able to handle stress without being fatigued or it affecting us emotionally. Outwardly, this can manifest as chronic health problems being properly diagnosed and treated. Strength, endurance, and a sense of what our body needs will develop. In our energy body, by opening the nadis, we will find that we have more energy and vitality in a way that is independent of circumstances. We tend to be more cheerful, appreciative, and able to take in sensual pleasure and enjoyment. We experience beauty. The mind stays positive despite negative circumstances. We tend to react to fear with courage and have the ability to be passionate about what is meaningful. Restlessness and anxiety are more noticeable as negative states to be dealt with rather than suffered, and we will have more ability to stay present and deal with issues when they arise. Things like doubt and insecurities are more easily transformed or worked through. The mind becomes more flexible and adaptable and sees more creatively. We gain more clarity of thought and the ability to sense value and quality. We become more decisive and are able to act on what we know. We can see and appreciate different viewpoints even when we don't agree with them, as the tendency is to see why it is true for the other person. We can see the big picture or take in a variety of details. The mind also has more ability to reject its own movements and to enter into openness and receptivity. Intuition and insight, intuitive discrimination, a sense of what is coming and what the consequences of things are. The heart can feel deeper gratitude and sincerity. We will have more confidence, moral power, and faith in grace and providence. We experience compassion and love, feel and share happiness, find the underlying delight in being that is independent of circumstance. We give people energy. These qualities and movements will also become more spontaneous. If we think of humor, there are situations where something funny will pop out in the social dynamic. Sentiments, the right words, recognition of key elements, and sudden insights become more common. The fourth idea is that as we open the nadis and balance the system, we are becoming more subtle and making more connections. Becoming more subtle means being able to turn inwards. We will go into this in more detail when we examine the inner being. For now, we can divide the consciousness into 4 areas. The normal waking mind, which we are habituated to identify with the sense mind. This is supported by a subconscious made of memories and conditioned habits, as well as an incoherent layer of vague partial memories and unorganized associations. Behind this is a subliminal consciousness connecting to the subtle being and wider subtle planes. It is not limited to the physical senses. It has knowledge based on identity with what it is, and it has wider context. As we become more inward and receptive, we gain more access to the subliminal. This appears in dreams and also in waking time as knowledge, insight, and feeling something is right or true. The subliminal is also able to use subtle senses. The subliminal consciousness radiates energies and receives them. When we say the world reflects back to us, it is because of the action of the subliminal forces. Some of what is reflected are individual forms belonging to us, others are more universal and shared. We are connected to subtle worlds that are influenced by the power of our minds. We also share these worlds with people who have the same inner developments and values. The subliminal is connected to the higher consciousness above, where there is a direct awareness of the divine, the eternal. There is also a connection to the soul that stands behind the being and supports it, part of which evolves through lifetimes. With meditation, we get support for silence and concentration. As we develop the subtle energy system, removing blocks and opening pathways, these pathways allow for more action and influence from the subliminal consciousness. We become more intuitive and more in tune with the subtle forces. For example, as you become more self-aware, then it becomes possible to sense what energies we put out, what occupies our mind, and what begins to be reflected. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, and the circumstances arrange themselves. We begin to find the resources we need, or can see and understand that some things happen to us, even negative ones, that are exactly what we need for our growth. This is how manifestation works. If we focus on something, it brings about, depending on what is actually needed and what is possible with the existing conditions and forces. Karmic seeds can force us to deal with past consequences in order to perfect our ability to handle or gain the needed lessons. The seed both arises as conditions allow and helps to arrange those conditions. For now, the main idea is that we begin to see that reality is not as it appears to our senses, and we are able to actualize that awareness. We move from a waking state where we are looking through our senses and conditioning to a state where we see a more dreamlike reality where things happen for deeper reasons. Often this appears as insight into people and events, as well as ourselves. For instance, I used to catch a ride from my sister-in-law to and from school. She worked as a night nurse in the terminal ward at the hospital. It was an hour's commute one way. One morning she picked me up to go home and told me that she had a bad feeling that one of her daughters was in trouble. A little later she told me which one. This was before cell phones. She didn't know what was wrong. No one had called her, but she could feel it. As it turned out, one of the teachers had made some very inappropriate comments, and the daughter was very upset. This bit of psychic activity is the subliminal and the shared consciousness between the mother and daughter. My sister-in-law often related stories of people who were dying and could control the death process to some degree. They could hold on long enough for the last relative to arrive or to see their grandchild born. Or in some cases, when they learned they would be an invalid or have to go to a care facility, they would suddenly die. Or we can look at instances of terminal lucidity where someone with dementia suddenly becomes very clear and says things that are needed to be said before they pass on. The control of death has to do with the soul's influences as the life is ending, and this comes through the subliminal and often when there is a kind of sincerity. Opening to the subliminal and being able to allow more knowledge and ability to come through happens as one develops the subtle body. Alternate nostril breathing first balances the energy, purifies it, and expands the awareness, allowing us to see through our conditioned state. We become able to direct the energy anywhere, both in and outside the body. We can summon presences, qualities, and knowledge. We can lift the consciousness. The body is dependent on emotions and vital energy. This can lock us into their world and agenda. We can be trapped in the drama of the surface functions of the lower chakras. The advantage of using processes that work on the energy directly is that it bypasses our stories and drama. Though psychological action is necessary, it can be a trap and only reinforce a limited sense of identity. The other side of the problem is that this works, and one can benefit from it, but the benefit is limited to the quality of life and not a higher spiritual aim. Alternate nostril breathing not only works on the energy, but it makes us aware of more subtle layers and awakens a higher spiritual aim. In the next videos, we will look at Kundalini, the fivefold division of the energy and the inner being. If you got something out of this video, please hit the like and subscribe. Till next time.